What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to TTB Ravens Media, bringing you Ravens content every single day. And if you want to see that daily Ravens content, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below and hit the notification bell as well if you want to get notified every single time I upload a brand new video. Now, in this video today, it's actually coming from John, who commented on a post that I made asking, hey, is there anything that you guys want me to talk about? And I put it in the airtime. I put it out on the community post just to kind of see, I want to talk about what you guys want to hear about. So if you guys ever have any questions that you want me to make a video on, always leave them in the comment section down below. And if it's a good question, or if I'm like, hey, you know what, that's something I haven't talked about, I will most definitely talk about it. So thank you so much, John, for commenting this question. And he asked, what wide receiver would we most likely trade for? And I think this is a great question, not only because is it something that is relevant, but it's also something that's possible. And it's something that's also talked about, right? The Baltimore Ravens need a wide receiver. A lot of people will say that. A lot of media will say that. And, there are free agent options available. Julio Jones, Antonio Brown, Odell Beckham Jr., Will Fuller, John Ross, Emmanuel Sanders. There's a lot of guys available. However, there's also players the Ravens could potentially trade for, which is interesting because Chuck Clark has also been a major player that's been brought up around trades. Now, at the same time, I do not think Chuck Clark will be traded for a wide receiver. However, he could be traded for a pick, and that pick could eventually be flipped in another deal for a wide receiver. So in this video today, I'm going to be going over the most likely trade scenarios for the Baltimore Ravens to make at the wide receiver spot. So please let me know in the comment section down below if you think, hey, I think we could trade for this guy, or I think we won't trade for that guy because of XYZ. Please let me know in the comment section down below. But let's get into it. Let's start off with the guy that I think would be the best trade fit for the Ravens that is a possibility, and that would be Tyler Lockett. Now, Tyler Lockett, I think, is a top 20 wide receiver in the NFL. He is undersized, but he's very good with the ball in the air. He's an excellent deep threat. He's great on the sideline. He's used to playing in the scramble drill with maybe the best scrambler in the history of football is Russell Wilson at just evading pressure and staying in the pocket and then eventually throwing a pass. He's played with that his entire career. So Lamar Jackson, if he scrambles outside the pocket, Tyler Lockett knows exactly what to do, and he would be a great fit with Lamar because Lamar has great touch on the ball. He can fit it on the sideline. He can fit it over the top. He just needs his receivers to make that catch. Tyler Lockett makes those catches. He makes those catches on a game-to-game basis, right? Then the other reason is, why would the Seattle Seahawks trade Tyler Lockett? They're tanking. And Tyler Lockett is older than DK Metcalf. DK Metcalf is a very young, very high-profile, big-time player in the NFL. He has a lot higher trade value. However, at the same time, the Seahawks are probably going to want to build around DK Metcalf in the wide receiving group. Tyler Lockett is aging. He's about 30 years old, so he's not old yet. But he's not a young piece. When you're rebuilding, you don't need a 30-year-old wide receiver when he's arguably not even the best wide receiver on your team. So he can provide value to other teams. So I think they will be shopping him this offseason, during the season, as a player that they could say, hey, you know what? We can take some of the dead cap money because it doesn't affect us. The Seahawks aren't trying to win the Super Bowl. They're not trying to win the Super Bowl whatsoever. I mean, if they won it, they would be very happy. But that's not the goal. They didn't really go out hard after a quarterback. They got Drew Lock, who's not very good. They got Geno Smith. Overall, what they are doing is they are just saying, hey, you know what? Let's wait a year. Maybe we get Bryce Young in the draft, or we get another quarterback that comes out. So trade away the assets and get more picks and get young assets. And the Ravens can trade away picks to get a guy like Tyler Lockett, and the Seattle Seahawks could take a burden of his contract. Now, Tyler Lockett's contract isn't the most team friendly, but it's not bad by any means, okay? He is making around $11 million as a cap hit this season. It's only $10 million. $10,050,000 is a cap hit this season. Next season, it's a $16.75 million cap hit, so a big cap hit. And then there's a potential out. And the potential out is crucial because it shows that, hey, if the Ravens want a short-term deal with Tyler Lockett, that's fine. If they end up keeping him, it ends up becoming a $24 million cap hit and then a $24 million cap hit again over the next two seasons. So it's not a long-term deal that the Ravens want to be buying into. However, in the short term, if they want to say, hey, let's get Tyler Lockett for 2 years, he can play next to Bateman, he can play next to Duvernay and Tylen Wallace and James Prochet. Maybe the Ravens draft another wide receiver in the second round at some point in the next 2 years. That would be very worthwhile for the Baltimore Ravens. I think it would be a really good move. I think they could send over, a third-round pick, a fourth-round pick, a day 2, day 3 pick, and maybe get Tyler Lockett in return. I think that'd be a great move for the Baltimore Ravens. There's other players that I'm going to talk about as well. So that's kind of the first player, I wanted to bring up. The next two guys I'm going to say are guys the Ravens are not trading for. DK Metcalf and Mr. 49er Deebo Samuel. They're not trading for them. I just have to say that right now. They're not trading for them. Neither of the teams want to trade them, and neither of them are going to want to play for the Ravens, and it's going to cost way too much to trade for them anyway. So I just wanted to get that out there. But, there are some other players. Guys like Brandon Cooks could be potential players the Ravens could try and trade for. Brandon Cooks is a very intriguing player in the NFL, as he has been undervalued the last few seasons. He's still solid, all right? He is still a solid wide receiver and a solid deep threat and a good veteran to have in that locker room. Now, he is on a big contract right now. He is on a $10 million cap hit, but then next season it's a $26 million cap hit. And then the next season is a $24 million cap hit, but there is a potential out after 2023. Brandon Cooks is the type of wide receiver I think a lot of Ravens fans are looking for. Fast, veteran, and still good. This is not Brandon Cooks is still a productive wide receiver in the NFL. I'm going to pull up his stats really quickly to show that he's still a good wide receiver, because I think a lot of people hear Brandon Cooks and they think, oh, he's not very good anymore. No, he's still solid. He's had back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. He did not have a 1,000-yard season in 2019, but other than that, he's had a 1,000-yard season every year since 2015. He's good. He's a good player. He's very solid. He can get the big play. He can stretch the field. He can go underneath. He's a veteran that knows how to play the game, and he's not going to be crying for the football. He is a player, I think, that is the other trade candidate at wide receiver for the Baltimore Ravens if they really want to push for that wide receiver. I think Brandon Cooks will cost a little bit more than Tyler Lockett just because Brandon Cooks is playing with the Houston Texans, and while the Houston Texans don't have a number one wide receiver right now, they are trying to get Davis Mills to be comfortable. And they don't have another guy where, like DK Metcalf in Seattle, if Tyler Lockett leaves, they still have DK, which is good. If Brandon Cooks leaves Houston, it's Nico Collins. It's a really struggling wide receiver room, so they're going to want wide receivers. And they may have drafted a player. They didn't draft anyone super early, but overall, the Texans, they do need their wide receivers, and they believe in Davis Mills, and they want to make sure that he has some weapons. But if they get a good enough offer, I think they'd be willing to part with Brandon Cooks. But Brandon Cooks' trade value over the last couple of seasons has been basically first or second round picks. And it's gone down each year, but overall, I think the Ravens could do it for, a third round pick, and a much farther in the future, fourth or fifth. But overall, I think I like the Tyler Lockett deal a little bit better. But those are kind of two good players. I could have brought up a lot of players that it's like, oh, they could trade for this guy, and it's like, they'd be the wide receiver 6 on our depth chart. Guys like, Quez Watkins and Jalen Reagor and stuff like that. Guys that really wouldn't have much of a chance of playing, but I feel like that's not really worthwhile to hear about. So I figured those are two guys that are good football players. They would be in the top 3 wide receivers. They'd be in the top 2 wide receivers. You could argue they'd both be number 1 wide receivers for the Ravens that I think the teams would maybe be willing to part with, and they wouldn't be too expensive for the Ravens. But let me know what you guys are thinking. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe for daily Ravens content. If you guys want to join the airtime, and you guys want to ask me questions directly on there, please go ahead and do so. I will definitely make videos about them. If you guys want to check out the TTB merch store, you can check that out in the description down below as well. But thank you so much for watching, and I will see all of you again tomorrow.